is securing the federal enterprise. You're in a unique business in the defense space compared to your civilian colleagues in that you're securing space for warfighters.
Yes.
Primarily.
Yes.
There are other missions within that, but it all feeds into supporting a warfighter. How does that impact the way that you think about security and the way that you think about securing your enterprise?
Certainly. So thanks for the question. The differences, in fact, I was sitting at the reserve table going, wow, one of these things is not like the other, and that would be me in the defense enterprise.
That's why you're here.
Yeah, I thought it was for my wit, charm, and beauty, but who knew?
Sorry.
That's all right. So let me give you a little background for those of you who either don't understand the Defense Department or don't want to understand the Defense Department, you know, personal opinions aside. We can't call in sick. We can't call in with, oh, my network is down, so I get to have a freebie day. I am one of those corny people who thinks that my job is to make sure that all the warfighters get what they need to execute their mission, whether it be actual warfighting defense of the nation or humanitarian assistance and disaster recovery. For example, in Ferguson right now, we have quite a few aircraft being deployed. So when I'm looking at security of my data, security of my networks to a lesser extent, I have to go, if someone gets in my loop and figures out what I'm doing, my advantage is gone. And it's just not my soldiers, seamen, and airmen, and Air Force. I'm mostly concerned about the airmen because that's who I work with every day, but it's a joint environment. I have to go, all right, I have slipped up, and I have put them in danger, and I've put the nation in danger. Again, this is a personal opinion. Y'all can take it for what you think it's worth, but there are people in the world who don't like us just because we're here. Defense Department is there to make sure that we ring around our civilian population to make sure that we're safe and that our way of life is not threatened. So I'm really glad I'm on the security panel because that's near and dear to my heart, because we use the cyber terrain as much as everybody for a variety of things. So I don't take it lightly. And I also have to remember that I have so many different mission sets that the levels of security have to be fungible in order to meet the apex between security, resiliency, and efficiency.
Has that apex changed over the maybe the last 5 years or so in particular?
Absolutely. So I'm sure all of you are familiar with your information assurance officers or whatever you call them in your individual organizations of, you can't do that. That is too high of a risk, even if it's a minuscule risk. I've seen some changes of, okay, we are going to allow that, recognizing that there may be some risk associated with it, but the probability and the consequence are such that we can accept it. So the risk conversation has actually come more to the forefront, and that's changed not only how we implement security, but where we implement security and with whom we implement security.
I want to pull that string a little bit if we have time. Larry, you have a similar mission in the law enforcement space to what Leslie has in the warfighting space, but there's definitely a distinction there. Tell me about how that distinction influences the way that you and your colleagues at Justice think about this security issue.
Sure. So yeah, there's a lot of commonality there in some of the challenges we face in terms of the deployment and the risk to the employees and the people we're supporting. Right, we have agents in the field in DEA, FBI, marshals, and a few other places where, you know, they're not only is their job at stake with the risk decisions we're making, but their lives and sometimes are at stake with it as well, as Leslie said. So I think there's some commonality there. Where there's some differences is we have a little bit smaller physical space to work with. We're more focused on the U.S. and some of the immediate neighbors we have to deal with, but we're not quite as global as DoD is on that sense. So I think that makes it a little bit different scope. I would like to follow up on the comment there about the changing risk discussions. I think one of the things that You know, a lot of the people in cyber are now starting to push, and I think it's the right answer, is we're not trying to say no, we're trying to say how. So it's not that you can't do everything you want to do, it's like, okay, well, what's the risk of doing it, and how can we help you do it, and how do you get your job done with doing that? So I think that's a really good transition the cyber community in general has been on for a few years now.
What's driven that from your perspective? I mean, the end user has been asking you and your colleagues in that in the security space that question for years.
Right.
Why? What comfort level do you have now that you didn't before to be able to think that way?
Right. So I think there's a few things that have facilitated that kind of change of mindset. So one is just the awareness of cyber and the risks that have come from a lot of the major breaches and things that have happened over the last 10 years or so. Has helped raise awareness, enable the end user to have that discussion more appropriately, but also having CISOs get elevated in the organizations to have more of a business focus, a seat at the table to have those discussions about getting the mission done rather than being the IT security people from days gone past sitting in the back room.
And are you optimistic about that arc continuing? Because one of the things this administration has been adamant about, and you see it in the president's management agenda, is that collaboration and kind of a gelling of the C-suite where all of those leaders are talking to each other on an ongoing basis, and not just talking, but depending on each other for success. So does that cause you to be optimistic about that?
It does. I think we have to, and for a lot of the reasons folks have talked about earlier in terms of modernization and continuous improvement, being able to keep up with the pace of technology and those kind of things, I think we have to be in that conversation, and I think that's the right way to go about it.
Chris, the vendor support here, as your colleague Anil talked about in the previous panel, is as a partner to the Leslies and Larrys of the world. How does that partnership concept, rather than just selling them stuff, impact or influence the way that you think about what they need and how you support what they need?
Well, it really is a partnership. We have the same worries, we have the same concerns, the same things that Leslie and Larry are kept up at night, keep us up at night as well. We're all in this together. We don't really look at our security services as a way to increase our stock price. We look at security services as a means to protect our customers, protect our infrastructure, protect the nation. I'm very happy to hear, Leslie, you mentioned that risk is getting a new spotlight. Risk is the foundation of a solid security governance framework. All cybersecurity frameworks are driven by risk management, and without that, they simply don't work. And these frameworks have been around for decades, but they've been largely ignored until recently. And I think the things that have been putting risk back in the spotlight is the fact that we are transforming as a society. The proliferation of the internet, the fact that we have to move faster, the fact that we have to reduce complexity, reduce costs, improve performance, and improve security all at the same time, are challenging us in a number of different ways. And we started off with a knee-jerk reaction of just buying technology, and technology is not a solution. Technology is a tool that supports a governance framework and a strategy. But given all, and I think technology is in part to blame for a lot of the cyber mess that we're in right now. There's too much background noise, there's too much clutter, there's just too many things to manage. So we are forced to go back and partner with these agencies to build a solid risk management foundation, and then begin layering on the tools and techniques. And that's our philosophy. That's our driving mantra within CenturyLink.
The impetus for this conversation is the transition, or as Kay wanted to call it, transformation to EIS. All the stuff that we've talked about so far, Larry, how does that all fit into what you and Joe and the rest of the IT team at Justice are looking at as far as EIS?
So it is a tool, it is a transformation, it's a transition. I know there's probably a little of both in the path we're on to move off of the networks contracts and into the transformation. We're looking at it in terms of how do we improve the service to the customers, how do we make it more flexible, more on demand. We're looking at the technologies that can help us in there off of the networks or the EIS contract and the vendors in general, looking at how shared services help with that. So there's a whole lot of pieces moving towards that. more business user-focused delivery of the services they're looking for.
Leslie, specifically to EIS, what do you see there that's useful for you and your colleagues at the Air Force? There's been a little bit of, there's almost a love-hate relationship with GSA and DoD generally over the years. I don't know about the Air Force in particular. What do you see here that you are looking forward to being able to utilize?
Sure. So for all of you GSA folks, I just work with you guys. Y'all are fantastic. And I don't give compliments easily, so you might want to write that one down. So I know, you should at least know that. So what they're doing with the enterprise offering of support and services, the Air Force is looking at, because I think the comment earlier about budget, and I can't remember who you represent, so I figure you're going to ask another budget question, just trying to wave that one off. So nobody ever has the budget that they want. Nobody ever has the budget that they think that they need. So for us, we don't have enough to cover down on all of the missions that we have. So again, for those of you who are not familiar with the Air Force, whenever vendors come in to meet with my boss and I usually do the 1-minute spiel of, we are the largest airline in the world. We are the largest transportation company in the world, the United States Air Force. We operate cities. That's our basis. We operate schools. We operate HR. We have medical services. We have, we monitor credit cards because we have our own, budgetary. We do a lot of different things. So in order to do a lot of different things means that we have to have folks who are focused on the mission and not necessarily on doing the network, and also possibly providing all of the security except where it's mission related. So we're revectoring, we're looking at, all right, we have this many people. How do I take them out of laying down wire, managing switches, to a no kidding support, mission defense, and cyber protection. So that revectoring is going on right now as far as how are we going to plan for fiscal year 19 and beyond. And then what does that mean? How do we include more partnerships in order to get out of a business that we are not the best in? I think we've discussed that this morning, and get into the areas that we, no kidding, are our jobs, our primary jobs. So looking at that enterprise, how do we take that into Air Force networks and also across the Department of Defense?
So Chris, what I hear Larry and Leslie saying, the same thing we talked about on the previous panel, which is they see EIS as an opportunity for them to get out of business, and you use the actual terminology, get out of businesses that they don't need to be in anymore, and let you and your colleagues do that business for them because that's what you do, and let them do what they do instead of being things that they don't have to do. What does that make sense to you, and do you see other opportunities for you and your colleagues in industry with the EIS?
I do, and I think the foundational term here is digital transformation. EIS, in my opinion, was designed to help us move faster and transform our networks. From a security perspective, what that means is reducing costs. It means improving security, improving security overall, reducing complexity, and improving performance. Those elements, to me, those are the 4 pillars of what true transformation is, and EIS needs to accomplish those things. We're not trying to get agencies to spend more money. We're trying to get the agencies to reduce their spend, reduce their complexity, and improve their security and performance at the same time. That is my mission. That's the mission of CenturyLink cybersecurity services. And the way we do that is by taking full advantage of one of the largest IP backbones in the world, looking at the movement of the internet, studying the behavior of the internet. We capture 135 billion net flow sessions every single day. We have a team of scientists that analyzes the movement of that traffic so that we can get better at predicting attacks. That is one way to make security frictionless, is getting into a partnership with major network services companies that look at the movement of the internet, because eventually the bad guys have to use that highway to either exfiltrate data, implant malware, communicate with the botnets they've installed and infected inside of agencies. So we have to be transformational in our thinking to achieve those 4 objectives, I think. It's about making things simpler, not more complicated. Because once you do that, you reduce the spend and you improve security.